The last thing we want to be able to read off a completed truth table is whether or not an argument is valid or invalid. So our definition of validity tells us that if an argument is valid, then it is impossible for all of its premises to be true and its conclusion false. Or conversely, if all the premises are true, it's impossible for the conclusion to be false. So we can take that definition of validity and use it to figure out whether or not an argument is valid by looking at the truth values for the premises and the conclusion on our truth table. So an argument is going to be valid if there is no row where all the premises are true and the conclusion is false. If there's no row like that, then that argument satisfies our definition of validity. The premises are true, the conclusion has to be true. It's impossible for the premises to be true and the conclusion false. There's no row where we see that possibility. So the argument is valid. On the other hand, if there's at least one row where all the premises are true and the conclusion is false, then the argument violates our definition of validity, and hence the argument is invalid. So let's evaluate an argument where we've got the biconditional statement here as our conclusion, and we've got our disjunction and our tilde statements as our two premises. So to evaluate this argument for validity, we'll look under the main connective for our conclusion, and we'll find the rows where the conclusion is false. We want to look at these rows and see if both the premises are going to be true on those rows. So we look over here at our disjunct for that second row where the conclusion is false. Our disjunct is true, so we look over here at our tilde, but our tilde is false. So this row isn't a row where both the premises are true and the conclusion is false. So it doesn't violate our definition of validity. Now we look at the second row. Our conclusion is false on that second row. We look over here at our premise. Oh, our premise here, the disjunction, also false. So this row is not a row where the conclusion is false and all the premises are true. Since those are the only two rows where the conclusion is false, there isn't a row where all the premises are true and the conclusion is false, and so that argument is valid. To see an example of an invalid argument, let's take our argument where our biconditional is our conclusion and our conditional statement is our premise. So again, we look under that biconditional here, and we've got those two rows where the biconditional is false. That first row, we go over here and we look at our premise, our conditional statement. It's also false. So this isn't a row where the conclusion is false, but the premise is true. So we go to our second row. Our second row, our biconditional is false. But our premise is true. So this is the row where the premise is true, but the conclusion is false. So that row shows us that that argument with our conditional statement as a premise and our biconditional statement as a conclusion, that's an invalid argument because it's possible for the premises to be true without guaranteeing that the conclusion is true. So that's an invalid argument. So those are all the things that we need to be able to read off our completed truth table. And this is the end of the playlist.